Good evening, everybody. Hope you're having a good day. We're feeling a little better about our prospects of being back together with cases, COVID cases declining a bit and us getting a little bit of relief. I hope you've heard the word that we're back to in-person worship beginning this Sunday. So if you haven't made a reservation for that yet, you can do so. We do have, we're still a limited capacity, of course, and will be for a foreseeable future. But there are spaces, so you can make reservations for this Sunday. This is the Sunday that Bill Owen, Dr. Owen, will be with us. Hopefully you're in the loop and you've heard the business meeting last Wednesday or heard the reports this last Sunday. The report about our pastoral transition and the Center for Healthy Churches. Sent you a church-wide email that gave you the presentation from the personnel committee. So if you're unclear on any of that, check the website, check your email, give us a call to church. We want everybody to be on board and have a good sense of kind of the decisions in front of us right now. This coming Sunday, though, Bill will be here, Bill Owen, to bring our sermon. Of course, part of the recommendation is our consideration of Bill as our transitional pastor, as well as a consultant coach in the transition itself. We'll have a business meeting, a special call business meeting this Sunday after worship, but it'll be a Zoom meeting, so it'll be 11:15. Log on through the link that you'll get. That'll go out tomorrow, and hopefully another one will go out Sunday morning as a reminder, but look for that link tomorrow. You'll go to that link Sunday, not afternoon, Sunday 11:15, and join the business meeting where we'll pick things back up from the personnel committee and cover any other discussion we need related to the recommendation. So I think that's the basics around that. We also, the nominating committee has named a celebration committee, and with Gary and Vicki departing and their official roles, and us struggling to know how in the world do you celebrate folks who've given so much to so many of us and to their church in these kind of times. And we've got good folks on this celebration committee trying to work through that. And there'll be some sense of looking to the future, but there'll be some things as far as celebration, but there'll be some things we can do in the immediate as well. So just know that there are plans being made, and you'll get some updates on those kinds of things around the corner. Let's see, also coming up around the corner, we're not too far from the beginning of Lent, Ash Wednesday. I believe that's February 17th is our Ash Wednesday service, and we'll have a special service, virtual service. It's odd to have to add that in now, but sometimes we can do some live and sometimes not. So we'll have a special Ash Wednesday service. Dr. Gary will lead us in that. So that's that. I think I'm right by saying the 16th to 17th of February is Ash Wednesday. So it'll begin Lent, and we'll have a Lenten prayer walk. So we're working on a prayer walk here on the property that will be really meaningful. That'll be available for us during Lent, and a few other things, including a Lenten study that LaRue Spites is going to do for us from the Gospel of Luke, and we're looking forward to that. We'll release that each study weekly on Wednesdays. So a number of things around the corner, and as we begin to open the spaces up here, we're anxious to do the next thing and to have folks back. Sunday school classes can make requests to use the fellowship hall. So if you're in a class and y'all are thinking about how we'd like to get together, whether that's a weekday or even a weekday evening, we're trying to be real flexible and accommodating so that we can let folks connect as much as they have interest to, and we're able to do that. So contact the church office, Brittany will let you know about our calendar options as to when small groups or classes can get together. So let me lastly, before I hand it to Gary, give you a little prayer update. As you pray this today and the coming days, remember these members and family, friends. Jim Garland remains in the hospital, so keep he and Natalie on your mind. Jamie Payton had to have gallbladder surgery this week. She's home now recovering, so we want to remember Jamie and Rand and their family and continue to pray for a smooth recovery for Jamie. And then we've had some losses recently. You know that Drew Doris passed. We had Drew's funeral last week, memorial service. And then today we remembered Sam Brown and a service for the family here at the sanctuary that was streamed. And that's available still on our website if you wanted to view that memorial service. And we also got word that Maria Lowry lost her mother in recent days, Margie Blackwood. So let's remember Maria and her family as well. That's it for me. Coming up, Gary's right around the corner. Y'all have a good evening.
Good evening, and welcome to Wednesday night sessions. I've just got a few more of these with you, and a couple of special things coming up. We're going to have a Wednesday night communion service, as we always do for Ash Wednesday, so we'll be letting you know about that. We'll do something very similar to what we did on Monday, Thursday. This has been an extraordinary year for ministry and for churches, and I just can't commend you enough for how well you have done, and all of us have done, to hold together and to stay connected. But it's going to be a challenging time ahead as the church moves forward to begin their search for a new pastor to lead this church. I have every confidence in the world that you're going to be able to find the right kind of person to fit this congregation, and we could talk more about that as we go along, but that's not for me to do. That is a discernment process, and I want to mention three things that we have always on our staff used as guidelines for search committees and for committees taking on a big and potentially not controversial, but one that is loaded with potential for conflict and differences and disagreements. And there's three things that we have always said, and they are: trust the process, trust God, and trust one another. I want to talk about those. I won't do all three of them tonight, but I want to talk about trust the process, because we live in a time in which we've really been seeing the great decline of any sense of following rules in the United States of America. Even our political leaders are not doing a very good job of following precedent and having respect for the rule of law and that sort of thing. And I think we saw some of this come to a head on January 6th with a group of people that had decided they were going to break into our Capitol. It was just the most horrifying thing of my adult lifetime to watch here in our own country, that our differences seem to have reached such an emotional peak for some people. I don't think they're the majority, but I do think some people are so angry and wrought up and frustrated that they, rather than asking some good questions, is saying, what is it exactly that we are struggling with, and how do we repair that together? And again, I keep going back to these three little things that we have talked about so often within our staff and within our church. And so trust the process, trust God, trust each other. All of those are enormous and difficult things when you talk about using them with tens of millions of people. But in every community, there's the opportunity to do these things. And in a country, obviously it begins with great respect for our Constitution. And I don't think it requires that we agree with each other. I don't think it requires for us to think the same way, believe the same things. We can't. I think the notion of what we need is national unity, without some sense that, it's not possible to really have that. Our life experiences have been different. The things that we are frustrated with are different. That's not so important, and I'm not sure our founding fathers really thought that either. I think they gave us a constitution exactly for the reason that they knew we were going to have profound and ongoing and constant differences with each other. In the scriptures, we have this all the way through, constantly struggling with this whole thing. The New Testament church had all these problems at the very beginning. Do we allow the Gentiles to come into the church without becoming good Jews first? And in the book of Acts, it leads to this wonderful chapter preoccupied with that whole question because it represented a radical break with the past. And so, what were we going to do? And it says they came together to conference in Jerusalem, and all the leaders came together to talk about what they needed to do. And then the conclusions are presented, kind of a compromise. And it says in that chapter, one of my favorite verses anywhere, it said, after much discussion. I wonder how much discussion there was. And you know, in our nation, our founding fathers put together this brilliant document. But the reason they did was to soften the potential for disruptions that could destroy the country before it ever got started. I remember many years ago when I first started my ministry, we were experiencing tremendous conflict within the Southern Baptist Convention. And a wiser and older pastor told me then, uh, you know, you don't really need Robert's Rules of Order, and you don't really need bylaws and all those things when trust is extremely high. When you have to have them is when it breaks down. But I think that the reason that you uh, have rules, constitutions, bylaws, practices, traditions is really to keep us from conflict that is unmanageable. And so um, I remember thinking that as I went to Baptist meetings where the disagreements were so profound, they were some of the most terrible things I've ever been around. And I remember thinking I was learning more levels of Robert's Rules of Order than I ever knew existed because we had to do that to keep the meeting from falling completely apart. And I've thought a lot about that in recent days. Where is the place of meeting where the smart mediators can bring us together and have us begin to say, okay, what's it going to take for us to stay together and do what's good for everybody? Um, I'm not really interested in thinking about that for the nation and the culture, although that's an ongoing issue. It's going to be important and it affects us. But where it is really important is within the Christian church, where every congregation, to one degree or another, embodies all the differences within that culture. And there are people on every strand of thinking about how things should be and political beliefs and um, educational levels and ideas about wealth and what it means. And you just name it. And there's potential for us to be divided from one another over these kinds of things. So, what will it take to trust the process? And I think about this, and as you go forward, here's some things that I guess I've learned these over the years, some of them the hard way. First of all, you trust the process by facilitating all the trust that you can, and that means putting things out where everybody can see it. You don't try to sneak things by, and you don't try to control it or manage it. You don't hide things from the congregation. I remember a teacher telling me when I went to my first full-time pastorate, trust your deacons, and they'll help you through things. And I really had to call on that, and it was a wonderful lesson at the beginning of my ministry uh, to take them into confidence and to trust them with the issues that were facing us. And so it can be very difficult to go through those things. And so the first thing that I say is you have to put things out there. Secondly, I think you have to talk to each other and listen to each other. And through any process that you go through, you will trust it more and more as you are able to express your input into that. And I would strongly encourage you to find every way you can in the days ahead to not just talk to the people you're normally accustomed to talking to or listening to the people that you normally listen to, but to open your ears as wide in the congregation as possible. And there will be a process that your folks working with the interim will take you through to talk about. those things. But the other thing is I think, to trust the process, that if we do it correctly and if we stay together in it, we'll get to a good result on the other end. And a lot of this has to do with having a little faith in the other person. And if you don't have faith in them, then maybe you just don't know them very well. And one of the ways you do that is to ask them and to talk to them. And I think that's been something I have learned, sometimes the hard way, but over the many years of ministry, that trusting in processes, committees, um, leaders, and tried and true ways of doing things, and being patient with those and recognize that they don't magically work out. But the other thing is, for all of us who are part of any group, to be willing to speak our mind in love, but to speak it and to express things. And I remember Charlie Goodson telling me about this church when we were first just having discussions about coming here in 1993, and they'd been through a lot. But Charlie described the church and said, our church is such that our folks want to have their say. And they don't always want to have their way, but they always want to be able to say what they think about it. And if you do that, most of the time they're going to be fine. And in the best moments, I've found that to be true about you and us, is that um, we have different views, different opinions, but once we put them out there together and we look at them, we begin to move and find ways to negotiate our way to the other side of it. And I guess the final thing that I would say is about forgiveness. Uh, sometimes forgiveness is presented in such a way that it is made to sound like this impossible ideal. In a way, I think Jesus talked about it as one of the most practical things in the world, because he said you've got to practice it constantly. You've got to forgive and forgive and forgive and forgive. And I think he was correct. I really do. I think that forgiveness is something you have to keep doing. And what that means is you begin to live toward one another without always in your own mind bringing up something that happened to us together 10 years ago. People fall out of churches all the time over pain that happened between them over something. And so forgiveness is the antidote to that. It says, I choose to live as though that did not happen, or that it is something that I don't have to reference anymore. It's not easy if you're holding on to your grievance. I think one of the hardest things that's going on in our nation right now is an utter lack of the ability to forgive one another for disagreements, to face the pain of racism, for example. If we keep denying it, we'll never get anywhere with it. But at the same time, um, what is going to be our way forward? How do we move from being wounded by the past to finding a better way? That's the better question. How do I help you not feel in such pain about something anymore? How do you and I put our energies into something we can do together? And so all of those things bring us back to the Christian idea of forgiveness. And forgiveness is not primarily about denial. It is about facing it to the uttermost and saying, in spite of all that has happened, in spite of the pain that it may cause, in spite of the gulf that's between us and the way we see things, I will accept and love and respect you sufficiently to listen and to ask God to help me find a bridge between me and you, so that we might find a better way forward from here. As I close tonight, I'd like to share a song. I will share a couple of songs with you from here to the end of my time. I've been writing songs really about the ministry all of these years, and I write about things that are happening and theological reflections. So this is one that I've really felt good about, and it's called forgiveness, and I'll share it with you right now.
You don't even have to pull a trigger. Words do the trick just as well. The damage accumulates in bits and pieces, and love crumbles into hell. With arguments to justify yourself, and truth a weapon in the way we tell. It's impossible to give forgiveness. It's even worse to have to ask if letting go is the answer. Living like it's gone is the task. How else you gonna deal with the past? How do you tell the mother of a victim that it's time to let go and embrace? She closes her eyes at night to be haunted by the anger and the emptiness and waste, and requests to grant the killer grace, and the image of her son's smiling face. It's impossible to give forgiveness. It's even worse to have to ask if letting go is the answer. Living like it's gone is the task. How else you gonna deal with the past? Deep inside, you knew it would hurt her the moment you inflicted the wound. But pride and stubbornness turned into years, though you promised you would fix it soon. It's a miracle to be forgiven, even more when we don't have to ask. If dying on a cross is really dying for us all, then love is something you don't have to grasp. Grace is a lifeline that someone else cast, and forgiveness is a gift, and all you do is pass it to someone else who's sinking fast. It's impossible to give forgiveness. It's even worse to have to ask if letting go is the answer. Living like it's gone is the task. How else you gonna deal with the past? How else you gonna deal with the past?